With the circumstances we're currently under, I've taken the opportunity to go through my backlog of the DC Animated Universe. No, not that one. That's the one. The classic Saturday morning cartoon DC Animated Universe, and more specifically, the show that started it all, Batman the Animated Series. About halfway through my watch of this widely appreciated and beloved series, I discovered that Batman Beyond, a series set in the future of the DCAU, was available on Blu-ray. So I bought it, and promptly binged all 3 seasons and the included Return of the Joker movie, and I discovered not only my favourite iteration of Batman, but my favourite Batman media of all time. And yes, that includes the Arkham games. Now, I know that's a bold claim, but hear me out. I understand these 2 series were developed for different audiences at different times, and I certainly fall far closer to Beyond's release date than I do the animated series, but I think both are important and have merit, and I'll get into that as I go on. But for me, Batman Beyond is far and away the superior show. The villains, protagonist, and narrative in general are all far better done in Beyond, and without further ado, my name is Character Studied, and let's get started with the villains. Now, I know this one will be the most controversial element on this list because what about Joker and Mr. Freeze and Harley Quinn and Two-Face and... Yes, I know. The animated series offered up character-defining portrayals of a plethora of Batman's rogues gallery, and I'd be foolish to refute that point. The point I'm going to make instead is perhaps just as foolish, but I believe I can back it up. Batman Beyond has better villains than the animated series. Now, if you exclude one-off villains, who were littered throughout the animated series as well, then you're left with Curare, Stalker, Willy Watt, Ink, Spellbinder, the Royal Flush Gang, Big Time, and the best of the bunch, Blight. Every single one of these villains tests Terry, either in physical combat or in his morals and values in their, mostly, 3-episode arcs. Take 10 of the Royal Flush Gang for instance. 10, or Melanie, approaches Terry as a kindred spirit, saying she knows what it's like to have an unconventional lifestyle driven by an older figure who ends up dictating how they spend their lives. The pair bond over this shared experience until Terry, as Batman, has to arrest the Royal Flush Gang and decide what to do about Melanie. He arrests her and hopes that that'll affect her for the better. This also connects Bruce and Terry, as Bruce tells Terry of Selina Kyle. This shows Terry's willingness to sacrifice his own love for the greater good, a quality that the Batman of the animated series seemed to be unable to do. Melanie also comes back 2 times, and in each instance she becomes more and more disillusioned with the criminal lifestyle of her family. In her first appearance, her and Terry share a connection over their overbearing mentors. And the second time, she reignites her flame with Terry but tricks the Batman into attacking a Joker's hideout alone due to being manipulated and tricked by her family. And the third time we see Melanie, she isn't working with the Royal Flush Gang at all, and is instead working in a restaurant and even bails out her brother Jack at the end of the episode and gets him a job as a dishwasher. This shows the progression of a character who was ushered into a life of crime and then works hard to rid herself of that after not only being arrested but losing the trust and love Terry gave her. Another example of a great character arc for a villain occurs with Big Time. Big Time, or Charlie Bigelow, was Terry's childhood friend who spent 3 years in jail, while Terry only spent 3 months due to him being a minor. When Charlie's released, he immediately goes back to a life of crime and steals chemicals that end up turning him into a disfigured creature reminiscent of Solomon Grundy. Terry is forced to then fight and defeat his childhood friend, eventually resulting in his arrest. This shows the struggle Terry faces in his loyalties, as this is a defining trait the character possesses. He has a loyalty to both Bruce Wayne and Gotham in defending it, but also to his childhood friend, who took a much harsher fall than Terry did. However, Charlie is not Terry, and his loyalties shift to align with whatever will make him the most money, as when he transforms into Big Time, he retains his intelligence, and in his next appearance attempts to take over a crime syndicate by lying to Terry and convincing him to arrest the criminal rival with the promise he'd turn himself in. This once again shows Terry's loyalty to his friends and allies, however misplaced it may be, as Big Time then flees his meeting spot with Terry and threatens to kill him before Bruce intervenes. This show also features one of the strongest physical villains in Ink, who, within the entire show's run, Terry was never able to defeat on his own. The first time Terry encountered her, it required Bruce stepping in with Mr. Freeze's gun. The second time, Bruce rescued Terry again with the aid of his Mega Bat suit. The third encounter, Ink was defeated by her double-crossing daughter, and the fourth and final appearance of Ink saw the Superman of the future stepping in and defeating her. This marks the first time where a supervillain was introduced that Batman couldn't defeat, which added an element of realism to the character of Terry, as there are some forces none of us can defeat on our own, and Inc. became the embodiment of the dark force for Terry within his stint as the Batman. But the true example of villain arcs in Batman Beyond is Derek Powers, who concocts most of the events that propel the first season. He kills Terry's father, resulting in Terry becoming Batman in the first place. He then is caught in Terry's first fight in the Batman suit and is exposed to a nerve agent that can only be cured via radiation. This starts his transformation to Blight, one of the most visually striking and terrifying foes in the show's run. From here, he hires Inc., is responsible for the return of Mr. Freeze, the first time Terry sees what Powers has become, and creates the villain Shriek specifically to go after Batman when his hatred for him begins to consume him, before finally revealing his identity in the Season 1 finale as a result of his meddling son Paxton. Blight then disappears from the show entirely, but it is hinted that he survived his apparent death, which makes the character all the more intriguing. Blight is an interesting character because his duality is the exact opposite of Terry's. Whilst Terry hides his identity to protect those close to him and feels a sense of purpose and righteousness wearing the Batman suit, Derek Powers constantly uses a skin suit to keep up public appearances and convince the public he's an upstanding businessman running the company Bruce Wayne once did, as he knows his true nature, should it ever be revealed, would cause him to lose everything he owns. Had the show continued and he returned, it would no doubt match the sensation of the Joker's return to Neo Gotham, which I'll discuss in more detail when I compare the titular character of both series. Batman. Whilst Bruce Wayne and Terry McGinnis bear the same crime-fighting alter ego, the tactics employed by them couldn't be any more dissimilar. When Bruce starts the animated series, he is already the Dark Knight detective and without any real flaws. Bruce is mainly faced with external threats and his villains and the occasional inner turmoil over losing his parents, which, let's face it, was never his fault because he was 8 years old and unable to help. Terry, however, starts the series with a 2-part origin episode which establishes Terry and the guilt of his father's death, knowing he could have physically defended him from any attacker if he had obeyed his father's grounding instead of leaving him in a fit of rage. This guilt and need for revenge causes Terry to steal the Batsuit from Wayne and in turn become the new Batman of tomorrow. In my opinion, Terry has far more depth and everyday struggles than Bruce does in the animated series. For one thing, Terry doesn't have anyone to cover for him in his day-to-day life outside of Max, and Max is no Alfred. This leads to Terry's girlfriend Dana constantly being upset and angry at him for having to cancel plans due to his outings as Batman. He also constantly deals with the family pressures from his mother, who is doing more education courses to acquire a better job to look after her 2 sons, and his own sense of self-doubt stemming from his various failures both as Batman and as Terry. He frequently strives to better himself, as in the Batman Beyond movie he explains to Bruce that he's not a kid that Bruce trained and took in. He stole the Batsuit himself and chose to be Batman. This aspect of partial sacrifice versus dedicating one's entire life to crime fighting shows the distinction in Bruce and Terry. Bruce needed to be Batman. Terry chose to be Batman. Outside of the philosophical differences between the pair, Terry to me is just a much better and more effective crime fighter. Whilst Bruce trained in various forms of crime fighting and has his utility belt to aid him with batarangs, lockpicks and grappling hooks, Terry's suit has a bit more of an edge with crime fighting. It turns invisible, enhances his strength, produces batarangs from within the suit, is capable of flight, and has audio and video recording devices in the suit. But that's just me gushing about aesthetics and imagery. If we really examine the 2 characters, one is far more relatable, impressive, and even more morally righteous. Bruce does adopt and train Dick Grayson and then Tim Drake, but he refuses to let people in. He dedicates his whole life to avenging his parents. Terry only does this to the extent of the end of his origin, and once he exposes Derek Powers to his own nerve gas, he considers his revenge taken. Bruce approaches Terry for the offer of a more permanent position of being Batman, to which he agrees because, as previously stated, he wants to redeem himself for his past mistakes. This devotion to righting his wrongs sounds similar to Bruce's mission, but it comes with the difference that Terry doesn't push his sense of duty as far as Bruce did. He knows that he is both Terry and Batman, whilst a line from Bruce in an early Beyond episode indicates that
the voice kept calling me Bruce. In my mind, that's not what I call myself.
What do you call yourself?
this displays how much of Bruce's life was dedicated to being Batman. Terry still plays video games, eats pizza, and spends time with his family. In fact, this family connection is highlighted in an episode where a telekinetic villain convinces the school that there is a ghost roaming its halls. This prompts the teen to hold a seance, and when Terry's brother Matt catches wind of it, he asks his mother and brother if they can hold a seance in their home so that he may speak with his deceased father. When the pair explain to him that seances don't work like that, the brother is distressed, saying he needs to speak with him because he's forgetting what he was like. This culminates in the end of that episode when Terry sits down with his brother and a photo album, and the pair discuss that his father will live on in their hearts and minds, a lesson Bruce was never able to learn. These character differences affect the two heroes in the way both shows tell the story. I think this one really comes down to preference. Do you prefer more episodic storytelling, or do you prefer serialized? If you prefer the former, you almost certainly would prefer the animated series approach to storytelling, as each episode has a core story or occasionally a two-part story told across 2 episodes that focus on an event or scheme from a villain Batman needs to stop. However, if you prefer serialized, I'd be willing to bet you prefer Beyond storytelling. Beyond is adept at interweaving stories about both of the previous points mentioned, in that it sets up, establishes, and revitalizes intriguing and compelling villains, whilst also adding far more to the character of Terry McGinnis. These episodes and Beyond would tackle complex themes and utilizes its setting and characters to explore anything from the dangers of addiction and how it can compromise someone, to dealing with death and how that affects the mind of a child. Whilst the animated series continuously had situations where sidekicks would appear and disappear with seemingly no explanation required, and would constantly have villains either never captured or seemingly killed, only to return a little while later with nobody surprised to see them, Beyond would return to a villain in a way that made sense to its universe. The only 2 examples I can think of where a villain is seemingly killed only to return a later moment without explanation is the Stalker, who seemingly dies due to being hit by a train only to return to assist Batman, and Ink, seemingly dying only to return in a later episode in order for Superman to assist Terry in defeating her. However, in my opinion, these are forgivable, as Ink is foreshadowed to still be around by Batman, and her inclusion made sense as she is the only foe Terry was never able to defeat on his own. The Stalker, though less defendable, is still explainable via his cybernetic features keeping him alive. However, in the animated series, Two-Face and Penguin are shown in the episode Almost Got Him, when in a previous episode, The Strange Secret of Bruce Wayne, they were shown all being arrested and put into Arkham. There are various other examples on this sort of continuity break, but I don't want to sound like I'm nitpicking against opinions. As I stated earlier, I prefer serialized and a constant continuity, but some people prefer the 20-minute stories that are offered by the animated series, and that's totally cool. But for me, the fact that Beyond is willing to go the extra mile, as is the case with Willie Watt, makes a lot of difference. Willie was a character established in episode 4 of Beyond and didn't return until episode 24, where we see him as both a more intelligent and more powerful adversary against Terry. However, his motivations remain consistent throughout. He wants to be with Blade. In the animated series, characters are reduced to gimmicks or personality traits, or simply complex schemes that could really apply to any villain if the specifics were changed. With Beyond, every Shriek episode felt like it could only work with Shriek. Every Ink episode was an Ink episode, and so on and so forth. It was less about the events and more about the perpetrators. No 2 villains in Beyond had anything in common outside of wanting to kill Batman, and I think that's why the show appeals to me so much. It only has 52 episodes, whilst the animated series had 85, 109 if you count the new Batman adventures, which DC does. And yet, I feel like there was far more depth and exploration in Beyond. In the end, this is just my opinion, but I'll take the futuristic and flashy colours of Neo Gotham over the dark and dull design of the original Gotham. I'll take the sleek and powerful red and black suit of Beyond over the blue and grey suit of the original. And if push comes to shove, I'd take Terry McGinnis over Bruce Wayne any day of the week. Because Terry is fallible. He isn't an unstoppable force who can overcome any problem and outsmart any foe he comes up against. He's a punk kid who broke into Wayne Manor and took the mantle of Batman, but who worked to earn it. And he doesn't let the death of his father turn him into an angry and vengeful person. He is a good man who wants to make up for his past mistakes. He wants to be Batman because it's the right thing to do, and in that way he's the polar opposite of Bruce. As I stated earlier, Bruce never wanted to be Batman, he had to be Batman. But Terry, he doesn't need to be Batman. He wants to be Batman. Thank you for watching this video all the way through, and let me know what you guys think in the comments. Did I make a compelling argument for the Batman of the future being a better hero than his predecessor? Or did I just gush about a show I love, while ignoring some of the best things about an older program? Do let me know, and stay safe. Thank you.